Hello, everyone, and welcome to Austin Shippey's Apocalypse Podcast, Episode 4. I'm happy to be your host. I'd recommend setting some ambience while you're listening to this podcast. Listen at sunrise or sunset, have a view of the outside world, light a candle or some incense, open the window and let a breeze in. Set some ambience for yourself. Yes, I think that this podcast, especially because of the casual blasphemy, is a nice way to spark some in-depth thinking about our world and our place within it. So that's what I recommend. The apocalypse is nigh. The New World Order is already here. The Antichrist is every person who frees themselves from man-made religious and social controls. Welcome to the kingdom of the earth. I'm Austin Shippey, and I will be your guide. Before I get into the episode, if you hear a little clicking, I have this little flip clock that very quietly clicks. So if you hear that, then that's just the clock, just so people know. Another thing, I recently set up a Kickstarter campaign. So we have 60 days to raise $1,000. And that goal being achieved will allow me to update my books and expand my business and get some pretty cool things going. So check out my Kickstarter. I've shared it across social media, and there's links to it everywhere. And also another way to sponsor me is through Patreon, and on there's exclusive content that I wouldn't post anywhere else. My books are all going to be in hardcover format coming up soon, probably by the end of this year. So if you would like to get the first edition paperback copies of my books, you can buy them on Amazon now. And last thing, reminder to subscribe to this podcast and also subscribe across the web. There's lots of things to subscribe to out there. And without further ado, we will get into the podcast episode. And this is something I never talk about, like the details of myself. I never think they're important to the main message of what I'm trying to get out. But intertwined with everything I've learned is my life. And I think it's kind of interesting. If you're interested in small businesses or psychic phenomenon or paranormal phenomenon, as well as witchcraft, you will probably find some similarities to your journey in some way. All I can really know about what it was like to be a baby and a little toddler is what my mom has told me. She has told me that I was always able to listen to her and understand her, even when I was a little baby, and that I never tried to rebel against her. I tried to listen to her and learn from her. I was also very in tune with energy as a child, and I remember just always thinking that it was something that was constantly around, that there was constantly some sort of energy surrounding us, and that spirits and deities and gods exist on some other plane. When I was really little, too early to remember, I would tell certain people that they had angels behind them, that I could see angels behind them. And I think I just remember that as a sort of light. I was never very happy in school, ever. A lot of people throughout my life have not understood me, and it's been the most shallow and cruel and irresponsible people I've found that don't want to have anything to do with me. And it's been the people who really want to learn about the world and are open-minded who are attracted to me. So a lot of people have been, and I've heard from them and from other people that I've been intimidating to people. And I never knew that that was what was going on. I just thought I was more mature than the other people in my classrooms, and that they didn't want to have anything to do with the things that I wanted to have something to do with. So I friendships didn't really form a lot of the time. I always had one or two good friends throughout school, but it was never an environment where I felt like I was surrounded by peers and people didn't really understand me. And when I started dressing strangely and dyeing my hair and doing all sorts of wild outfits and pictures and things, people started to not understand me even more. But I found that when I focused my creativity onto some sort of performance or public representation, as well as pictures, blog posts, I found that when I put those things out there, people liked them and that I was good at making them. So I decided to continue to do that. And I went into college focusing on a lot of art and writing, photography, public speaking, a lot of useful classes that have taught me a lot and helped me bring my business into a full thing, a full corpus of experiences that people can have when they find me. Being bisexual was always a strange experience that I feel has given me a more realistic grasp and view of the world than a lot of regular people have, the most average people, the most common type of people. Being kind of different than other people sometimes caused me to look in at them from outside of the group, and I could understand like what was going on where other people were too caught up in the moment. And so I started becoming very aware, and I still am aware, that there are experiences where we can be sucked in and time disappears, and it's hard to have an outside viewpoint or perspective because you're so in it. I've always been aware of the alternative, that you can step back and think and breathe and come to a rational conclusion. And so those two things kind of were always with me, and I think those were the precursors to my psychic experience, I guess, because psychic things have been a journey for me. When I was a kid, I had a little bit of them, but I had to work on it when I was a teenager, and still to this day work on polishing my abilities and making them more reliable. But I guess I just grew up and became wise at a very young age. I didn't have a great home environment growing up. I always had a good environment around my mom, but then there were other things constantly going on. There was a marriage and a divorce, custody arguments and things like that, and a whole lot of misery. My family has had a lot of drug abuse issues in the past. My mom's dad died from drinking too much, basically. And just drinking so much that it slowly killed him. My grandpa on my dad's side of the family died before I was born, so I never met him. But I did grow up with grandmas and grandpas and uncles and lots of family. But a lot of the time when I look back, things were just isolating. And people really weren't happy. And I feel like I've seen through my whole upbringing and growing up that a lot of people in America aren't really happy or satisfied. And life perpetuates itself and goes on, but people still have something that they're calling out for and need. But there's some sort of hole in our society, and I think a lot of it has to do with our spirituality and psychology. I think of generational curses as the bad psychological cycles and habits and methods that can perpetuate in families, and people are afraid to question them, and people are afraid to stand up and say that behavior is wrong. And people also avoid counseling. So it's no wonder a lot of people in our society are unhappy and don't know how to become happy. Magic has taught me that happiness has to come from within, and it has to radiate outwards. And until that can happen, you won't exist in a state of happiness. So you have to make your life something that you can radiate happiness with and be able to do things that you love. Those are some of the biggest keys to living, I've found. So when it came time to look into starting my career toward the end of high school, the first thing that happened was an idea for my first book just formed itself in my head on the bus ride home. And over the next 3 years, I worked on writing and editing and self-publishing my first book, The White Room. And I began promoting it online. And I registered my business, just Austin Shippey, LLC, in 2016. I finished The White Room in 2014 and started promoting it in 2015. Got the copyright for it in 2015. As well as that, I started going to psychic fairs and doing house cleansings for people and healing. And I was inspired by a lot of the past and history in my magical workings with people and spiritual healing. So there were these old methods that I picked up and made them work for me. Around all this time, I was also getting into searching for a religion. And eventually I found a religion that feels like home in witchcraft. And so these things have now been going on since then. And every day I've worked on them and contributed toward it in some way. After doing cleansings and psychic fairs and working a lot of magic, doing a lot of rituals, experimenting and learning, I wrote Presidium, which is soon to be in a hardcover, as I said, and it will have a fresh design. Presidium is a handbook of magical defense and protection, and I wrote it for a specific type of person, the person who finds themselves under some sort of negative spiritual condition and can't get themselves out of it, or doesn't know how to get themselves out of it. And a little while after promoting Presidium and continuing psychic fairs and promoting everything through YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, I found the British Traditional Witchcraft Facebook group. And eventually I started talking to Brian Kane. And then I had a phone call with Brian Kane and Christine Stevens, the high priest and high priestess of the New Orleans Coven. And I decided to ask for initiation. So I made the sacrifices I needed to make that happen. And I bought my plane tickets and I packed my bag and I went down to start learning. And I went down ready to disassemble my old foundation and build a new, stronger one. And I was so inspired and drawn in and just captivated by Alex and Maxine Sanders. They are iconic figures from witchcraft, and they were famous in Britain in the 60s and 70s for leading covens and being very open to the press. And I was inspired by their art and their attention to detail, their seriousness in the treatment of magic and witchcraft. And so I learned the Alexandrian methods. Recently, I decided to end my dedication and commitment to the Alexandrian tradition because I'm moving on into the unknown future. And I truly feel that the best magical work I could be doing is in experimenting as well as writing. Because witchcraft is something that's very sacred to me, and I don't share it with everyone. But the art and writing that I put out online and into the world, I do share with everyone. And I expect anyone in the world could come across it at any moment. So my spirituality informs my art. And my art is there to give people an experience and hopefully teach them something that they didn't know before. So I recently released my third novel, and the original title was 3 short stories based on dreams. And like many nightmares, they often begin as a dream. So now the book is going to be rebranded and have a new title, and it's going to be called Go to Hell, the Holy Book of Nightmares. And it's going to have a darker cover, less colorful design, and it will truly look like a horror book and not a dream book. So the spirit of that book has transitioned. And we're getting closer to October and Halloween. And I'm so excited. So now I'm working on the beginning of a coven and beginning of rituals for my new practices. And I'm being very open-minded and experimental and trying to learn what I can. And I find it so uplifting. And it truly just, it fills my soul with more light than before, and I feel stronger. Religion, if you use it right, can be very, very good and beautiful. My future plans: I want to continue to create and write and explore the world, and I hope to one day be able to promote my books to shops and send out copies to them, and then try to schedule events and travel to go to book events at shops. I also hope to one day get a literary agent or someone who can help me with the publishing end of things. And I hope to one day to be able to make films in some way, and write for films and be in films. I want everything I put out there to in some way encourage progress and a desire to make the world better. I want people to be thoughtful, and I want to awaken their thoughts. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and why my annoying voice goes out over the internet all the time. And I strive for independence and freedom, to be able to have a pure vision and bring it into reality. And I feel like there's so many amazing tools that we have access to these days, and everyone is getting into all the tools that computers can help us with. And I want whatever I do to create some sort of environment where people can express themselves and be themselves and talk about the serious issues of living and the most important aspects of life that you won't find in small talk or in a lot of other places. So I will continue to shape this world that I've created online, and I hope people continue to step into it and give it a chance and learn about some strange things, and maybe learn about some things that they didn't know before, but they're better off for knowing now. I also think someone like me who does so much spiritual work and who is so spiritually focused, I must have a lot to say about the soul and how to live life where the soul is kept as something sacred. So there's so much I could toss in there about my life and who I am. And I honestly don't know if the people who follow me on social media even do know who I am, or if I'm just some projection in their mind of something. Well, I've had several miserable jobs. I've cleaned office buildings. I worked at a spaghetti restaurant, an Italian restaurant. I worked at a pumpkin patch as cashier. And all of those minimum wage jobs were very draining and uninspiring. And I figured that I was more productive and better for the world being able to write instead of serve people or work a full day at some restaurant or store. So my whole life I've been working to continuously make my business thrive and be able to support my life off of it, so that I have time to create all the things that I like to create. And that also leads into my Kickstarter campaign. So if you would like to donate to that or see my business plan, I have a lot of things coming up and an eventual expansion. Who knows? It all depends on when the country gets financially better and when people want to support me on Kickstarter. Patreon is also very helpful. other jobs I've had, I worked as an extra, and I was in the background of 2 episodes a while ago of TV shows, The Librarians and Grimm. And I think I had green hair for maybe both of them. I'm not sure. I've also had a lot of experience with social media marketing, and also just designing and producing content for social media. And I consider myself, at the end of the day, a content creator or a media creator. And I make media about anything that inspires me. And I hope to continue making media on all sorts of things. And the last job is just being a priest, devoting a big chunk of your life to religion and God, and being a high priest, running a coven, and leading other people and being responsible for their spiritual journey. And it's not scary for me. It's not miserable for me. It's not too much responsibility. It's exactly what I like to do. And my brain is very good at working with systems, and as well as teaching and leading. So that's my way of, I guess, validating those things. Because our society is not very good at validating all sorts of talent. Seems like a lot of what our society is focused on when it comes to money is sex and food. Spending it all on sex and food and consumption. But we all know that America has a consumption problem. I think it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. People aren't emotionally and spiritually fulfilled. So they have to fill that hole or emptiness, fill those cracks with food and sex to distract and numb. And I see a lot of behavior like that in America. And it's no wonder we have these problems with psychology and health. But the most powerful industries, such as like Big Pharma, Walmart, Trump Towers, I don't know, all of these big industries that seek to get one thing and have one goal in mind, and that's money. And when you are doing things for money, you're basically doing something to take from people as they give to you. And when you take and take and take and you're not giving, you'll eventually cause a drought. Or no one else will have any. And our society makes this seem like a good thing. It makes it seem like one of the only things. And when it comes to survival, it is the only thing. So that fundamental idea of life and living is wrong. It's based on death. It's based on harvest. Taking things either from the earth or from other people. Collecting value. So it's based on death. It's a harvest. It reaps. What's based on life is giving and making sure that everyone has the basics. And the ultimate most dangerous crime is greed and selfishness, which come from fear. And the most ultimate virtue is generosity, of love, or of helping people. So we really, as a society, need to balance our scales and figure out what we want. And I think the only thing that's going to change that is if the Republicans lose power and the Democrats gain power. I know some of my listeners are not going to like that I'm saying that, but it's true. Right here, right now, we're in the factual world. And making sure that the bare essentials are available to everyone, that single mothers don't have to starve with their kids or step into a homeless shelter together. We need to be giving more to the people at the bottom. And the people at the top, sitting atop golden pyramids of money, the 1%, the billionaires, are crooks. They have reaped the crop that we grew, and they've kept it for themselves, and they don't disperse it down. So what do we do when someone is acting like a parasite and taking and being greedy for it? Bloodsuckers. Well, like in the French Revolution, you know what we do. We smash their pretty furniture and make them flee, or basically kill them. I'm not recommending people go out and kill rich people. That would be a mistake. But I'm saying the simple fact of history is that when someone becomes a dragon sitting on their pile of treasure and refuses to give it up, send in the knights and get rid of the dragon. What we can do, though, besides being murderous and channeling all of our rage into violence or destruction, is work within the laws, within the public eye, and work with politicians and actually put yourself out there and put the time in and know that your energy is being pushed out into the world. Vote. Participate in the world. And with each vote and each president and each year, our society gets better and better, and we fix more and more problems. And eventually, the mosquitoes and parasites of our society, the most greedy people, the most corrupt people, they will get their karma, and it will not make them happy in the end. And that's all there is to it. But it will only happen if we work towards it. And that means caring. If I was a knight, I'd walk up to that dragon and find the missing scale as soon as I could. And that metaphor is not saying that I would literally spear or sword fight a rich person dragon. But I would vote people in that would not make that person happy, not make that dragon happy. There's a lot of evil in our society and a lot of evil people, but there are a lot of good people. And the good people are stronger because angry, bigoted, uneducated people in this country are not happy. They operate in their life from a source of so much hatred for others and so much greed for themselves and their families that they commit atrocities and then they cover them up and pretend that they're a good Christian in the light of day. But deep down they know blood is on their hands. So they're not happy. There are so many ways to use your strength and knowledge and wisdom to improve society, and everything we do matters. Every little thing we do, even when we're alone, matters because we take that out into the world, and then we shake hands with people, and we impact them. And it decides our future actions, what we do. It informs our future. So you can't run away from responsibility. You have to be responsible for your own mind and your own moral code. And that means getting educated and learning about it and thinking about things and working on that brain of yours and thinking of all the things you never wanted to think about and trying to figure out the facts. And that is the process that's slowly, organically happening in culture right now. And I hope this is truly a revolutionary time in history, and that things will change for race relations, and racism will be, for the most part, stomped out. And people will be responsible for what they hold in their subconscious instead of pretending it doesn't exist. And more equality, more opportunity. Because every single person, whether you see value in them or not, has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they have a right to follow their own destiny as a being, not as a pawn for capitalism, as a cosmic being. Each person has worth, and each person has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when things all go according to plan and within the laws, and no one is committing any dangerous crimes, this is a state of peace and acceptance. And we're moving toward that. And if you're afraid of that, look in the mirror and be afraid of yourself. That's where all the evil is coming from, not those around you. Because each person has responsibility for what they do and the actions they make. Everyone is worthy. Every single person is deserving. You are deserving. So everyone has the right to a living. And if you believe that that single mother who has several kids and for whatever reason is raising them on her own, I think it would be despicable of you to tell her to marry for money. And I think it would be despicable of you to tell her that she needs to work a 9-to-5 and get daycare for her kids. Despicable and wrong. Every single person that is born has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of their own happiness. We all have a different story of how we got here. We all have different difficulties. Some of us have some horrible traumas. Some of us have oppression pushing us down, built into every system, and we need to continually make things better for each person. At the end of the day, we're all the same person. So care for one another as you would care for yourself, and may the blessings of the old gods be upon you. May the blessings of wisdom be upon you, and acceptance and tolerance, and may fear and greed and the demons, those two things harbinger, be banished. Thank you for listening to episode 4 of Austin Shippey's Apocalypse podcast.